There are different ways for different products, but there are some universal steps that applies to any product development process. Let's have an overview of this process before we see the steps one by one. First off, you have the idea, and this is where everything starts. You see a problem that you have a theoretical solution for. Once you have done some research and are confident that it's a good solution, you've shared your idea with some people that you trust and they also agree that it's a good solution, then it's time to explore your idea further in the planning phase. Here what you're doing is you're looking at your resources, time, knowledge and assets, and you start assigning them to different type of tasks that needs to be done in order to create the product. Next, you're moving on to the prototyping phase where you're trying to create a solution that resembles your final product. This isn't anywhere complete, but something that resembles the final product and already has the key features and creates the emotions you want to achieve in your customers. If you are happy with the results at the prototype stage and the feedback is good, then you start creating the actual product. Along the way of this process, you're always gathering feedback, which will always generate more ideas, which will then amend the plan. It might change the prototype, it might change the product. What's important here is that when you're doing something, it's never really fully done, because you're always learning more about what you're doing, you're getting more feedback, more issues appear, and you're getting more ideas how to fix things. So although this is an infinite cycle, you should always have a clear milestone where you release your product to the market. Now let's see these phases one by one. In the idea phase of your product development, there are a few questions you have to ask yourself. Why does that idea answer to your purpose? And what are the human desires it solves? Only once you have a clear answer to these questions should you go into what the actual product is. Sometimes a product idea comes first, but even then you should fully explore what the purpose of that product serves and what desires it solves. For example, when I first had the idea to create this course, the idea was simple. I wanted to share my knowledge to help others avoid the mistakes I've done during my career. And you already know how this idea is supposed to respond to the core desires. To achieve this, I could have followed different routes. I could have created YouTube videos, I could have written a book, or I could have even created an educational game. But I decided that the product should be a course because this is what I had the most resources available for. I had the knowledge how to build a website, how to script, edit and structure the course. I had most of the equipment to film the course, I had the time to create it and the money to buy the missing things. Lastly, for the idea phase, always remind yourself when you're brainstorming that there is no such thing as a bad or impossible idea. Everything is possible. Some ideas just need more resources than others, but you shouldn't worry about that just yet. Planning is probably the most crucial part of the whole process of development, because this will determine how much of your resources you will be using up in the rest of the development process. Most importantly, time. One if not the best tool for planning is a Gantt diagram, because it helps you to visualize your whole project in one place, helps you to assign people to different tasks, set deadlines, create to-do lists, and lay out your whole project on a timeline. On the x-axis, you have your timeline, and on the y-axis, you have the priority order and what needs to be done before another phase can begin. When you are creating a Gantt diagram, you're grouping together tasks, and you are allocating time, knowledge, assets, and money to them. Each task group should represent the different phases of what's involved with your project, and the way you lay them out is that your timeline can be as detailed as each block representing a day, but when you're planning out bigger projects over a longer period of time, you should consider going with a larger scale. So let's take a look at how this Gantt diagram would look like for this course. So task group 1 would be research and ideation. In this phase, I was researching the course market. What are the best platforms to create a course on? What other courses are out there? Which ones are successful? What are the reviews saying? What is the discussion about them in social groups for entrepreneurs? And I also bought and did some courses both on and off topic to see what the competition does for myself. Then, based on my research and the initial idea, I've started planning out the different steps, the tasks involved, the deadlines, and the resources I will need. The second task group would be creating the course content itself. And as you can see, this already overlays task group 1, because this was something that I could do simultaneously. So when I've reached the point in my research and formalizing the idea where I could start creating the content layout, this phase meant writing drafts, simplifying and changing the structure of the course several times. Then in phase 3, the course itself goes into production phase where you are actually recording the content, creating the visuals and the presentation, finalizing the draft and the structure of the course. And this is the point where I've reached a milestone, where other tasks couldn't begin until I finished the ones before. And it is crucial to mark these points in your plan, because this helps you to oversee what is connected to what. Then in task group 4, I had testing, which meant that I shared this course with a few people and did one-on-one interviews with them to find out whether it was helpful and well structured, whether there was anything that needed to change before it goes on the market. But as you can see, the task group 5 overlays task group 4 again, as the next task group is about promoting the course, and that can begin while the course itself is in its testing phase. And if you have done your planning well, at this point your product is not going to change significantly, so you can already start creating a promotion around it. This is a simplified way how the actual plan looked like, with its long lists of to-dos and deadlines, but hopefully it helps you to visualize what an action plan looks like. And the reason you're laying out your projects like this is because it really helps you to see the big picture. When you're in the project, it's really easy to get lost in the details and lose focus. And things don't always go as planned. But the important thing is that you have one in the first place. It will help you to have a reference point of where you are supposed to be and how many things you have ahead of you. The more you do it, the more accurate your plans will get, but without it, you will be flying blind. In the prototype step of the product development process, you're basically creating something that resembles your final product, which shows whether or not it's a working solution. It's very important that you keep in mind when you're creating a prototype that it's just a prototype. For example, in my escape room ClueQuest, this prototype was as simple as a room layout made with masking tape and a few paper cutouts. Sure, it was lacking some important characteristics of a real escape room, like the actual set design, but it did achieve the feeling of running around in a space, finding puzzle pieces that you can solve. And that's what sits at the very core of this type of product. Building a fully functional room takes several months, sometimes even a couple of years, not to mention the financial investment. So it wasn't a real option. But creating this prototype from nothing more than just paper allowed us to see how people interact with each other and with the different puzzle ideas. It was easy to set up, cost close to nothing, and it helped us to visualize the room and filter out bad ideas. By the time we built the actual room, a lot had changed, but the core mechanics of the prototype remain in the room to this day, even after several facelifts over the years. What a prototype of a product could be, well, it comes down to your product. If you're planning to open a cafe, you should invite friends over and cook for them where they can order from a menu. Or if you're creating a video game, a spreadsheet can represent the game mechanics, and so on. A prototype is essentially a transition phase between planning and production. You're already producing the product, but it's still easy to change and the risk of messing up is very low. It will help you to understand your product before it goes into production. This will help you to avoid mistakes, and ultimately, it will save you money and time. Once you're confident about your prototype and you've applied all your learning to your plan, you should start the actual production of the product. And this will bring its own challenges. You will sometimes only find out along the way what these challenges are. But if you have done your planning well, most of these difficulties should be laid out in front of you already. When you're creating your product, you should keep in mind a very important rule, which is called the 70-100 rule. I picked up on this during my time in video production. The 70-100 means that you have to decide between a movie you are 100% happy with, but it only has the 70% of the whole runtime, or a movie you are 70% happy with, but it has its 100% runtime. And this is a really simple choice. You want the one that you're 70% happy with, but it has all its runtime, as the other product is unfinished and it's missing the most important part of any movie, the climax. The reality is that being in the project and emotionally attached to your product, you will never be 100% happy with what you've done. You will always see flaws and you will always see things that you could improve. But the reality is that your audience most of the time won't notice these flaws. So you should aim for perfection, but you should settle for greatness. Always keep in mind that a great but finished product is much better than a perfect but never released one.